the OA's supply is the reason why we have our interest, right, or whatever. It's the reason why we have the gains we do on staking. If the OA's proportion of supply, right, if that supply was staked in any way, shape, or form, the rewards would be different. The price of the coin would be different, but then there wouldn't be a sustainability where there is a sustainable how do I explain this? A sustainable amount of coins that give its hex to stakers, right? So if everyone's staking, then what hex are we getting, right? Now the OA in a way, shape, or form, what people don't realize is that it's actually diluting itself over time. So over time, it actually is going to be irrelevant to have the OA in senses like, yeah, it's going to get 50% of all penalties and so on and so forth, but basically it gets nothing if we don't let it get anything, right? If we allow it to get something, then it's a play, but that play of benevolency also makes you understand that your benevolency then gets redistributed towards the system. Now in crypto, a lot of people don't understand this because they're not part of that group of people that are benevolent. There's a big benevolent factor in hex, and it's the fact that our inflation, our daily inflation is only taken into consideration with the total supply. So if we were to actually destroy the coins, which we can't because there's no function to actually destroy them, if we destroy the coins, the what happens is that sorry, it can't happen. I'm not even gonna try to come up with something. It can't happen. But the total supply is the reason why we have our rewards. So over time, you wouldn't want to dilute the OA. You would actually want the OA to gain more onto the system or maintain right now what it does have, because it would then later on in the system, it's the reward is going to be strictly related to the user's liquidity or not, because the rewards from the OA are going to be diluted at one point.
Okay, so hold on.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because now you're kind of not making sense, because you're saying you can't destroy the hex,
Yeah,
and no matter where it is, it's gonna be counting towards total supply, right?
No, so the only way to destroy hex temporarily, right? The only way to do it is to stake it. But by staking it, you're taking away.
The OA could just send to the zero address,
but that doesn't do anything. But listen, but what? Okay. So what does that do? It does not burn the coins. It does not. It just removes the authority of it, right? The authority of the coins is then in the hands of an OX address, the 369 address, which can't move. But it doesn't make it like the idea of having a whole community just based off of the fact that coins can't move is not enough, because we would want them to move if needed. Like it can move if it's needed. I don't think the need of it not allowing it to move it actually is worse for the system, because then the system can get manipulated how it wants.
And
if you think about it from a traditional perspective, if less coins exist, market cap goes up,
but who cares about market cap?
Look at mainstream.
But who cares
crypto,
about market cap?
Mainstream crypto does.
I'm not even going to bring in the liquidity aspect because it's not the conversation. The conversation is, I like what he's talking about, because people need to realize that the OA is there because it needs to create this inflation, and then the inflation is occur regardless if the OA is there or not.
No, but the OA doesn't pay the staker class.
Of course it does. What are you, fucking nuts? You don't even understand hex then, Keith. What do you mean? Everyone's liquid hex has the potential of inflating itself. The only way for you to receive that inflation that every hex does every single day is by staking it. If you don't stake it, the hex that your hex inflates. That inflation, you don't receive it. You give it to the stakers. So the OA not staking at a certain percentage allows us to dilute it and also receive its hex inflation.
Let me jump in and expand my explanation here. I think what I'm suggesting, Famous, actually takes both sides into account. Like it's like a compromise, right? So I totally understand that. Yes, like the reason we have 35% APYs for 10-year plus stakes is because a huge portion of the total supply is unstaked and it's kept in the OA wallet. Now you're saying if you send it to the burn address, that doesn't affect the total supply number. So therefore, all you're really doing is giving up control of the coins. So when you mentioned that it would like reduce our yields, well, apparently it wouldn't, right? Sending it to the burn address or it being in the OA doesn't reduce the yields at all. All it has is the potential to one day stake or dump on our heads.
Yeah, but
And
but
hold on, that to me that's the problem, right? Is the people in the system already believe that it's not going to do that.
yeah, but
So
you're
we're
not
already
burning.
in. It's not
You're
about
not
that though.
using the
It's about the
burn.
other people in the
You're
system.
you
Go
see
ahead.
the problem with the hex though. I understand what you're saying because you're using burning in two different senses to then explain like because the burning of what hex does as a function is different than burning it as sending it to a
I'm not.
360.
Yeah, I'm not using it in the hex contract terms of actually staking it. So I'm just using it shorthand for sending it to the zero address.
Sending it
That's
to
yeah,
zero. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Which I
it
see as a potential net positive, but
I do
slowly.
too. And
Yeah.
I'm saying slowly over time, not don't. This is what I think people have suggested in the past is like maybe one day Richard will send it all there. Maybe he'll renounce the keys or whatever. But I'm saying is what if we did it slowly over time? Like, what if once a month on the first of the month, you know, a percentage of the OA address was sent to the burn address? And the way you could do it is like, let's say by the 15th birthday of Hex, which is December 2034, the OA would have 0 coins left in its control. So the narrative there is, hey, you know, you're still getting your nice APYs for being early adopters and staking along, right? You're still getting the benefits of that. And then slowly over time, these coins are being renounced from the OA's control, which is more bullish for the overall ecosystem. And then really that narrative's not for us because we're already in, dude. We already believe in it, right? But I think it'd be a pretty cool narrative. And I think, you know, it's much easier trying to explain that than be like, well, Satoshi has 1 million Bitcoin. And dude, that comparison never goes over well. I mean, we're not Bitcoin. We're not the first mover. It's much easier to explain if it's like, yeah, you know, it's an early adoption marketing thing. You know, early adopters are
Yeah,
getting
but
great APYs, blah, blah, blah. Go ahead.
I find that like okay, so I don't look at what Richard or Satoshi did as wrong, and I don't see it as a problem. People that look at it as a problem, and I hope no one takes this as an offense, but I just don't think you understand crypto because it's like, how can someone own a business and not ask for a majority of the shares? Like if you've created it, you took so much time. Like there should be an extent of you're allowed to do this. Now there's risk with every type of ways of proportionately taking a percentage of something that is worth something. There's always a
Yeah.
risk. You take 99% of it, you have all the risk, therefore everyone assumes it's you. Like I think if Richard doesn't, like, over time as we dilute the OA, it's gonna be like Richard has less, it's less and less and less and less and less of a risk. Because what people don't get is that the OA is not staked at 50% of its coins. Therefore, if you're staking 51%, you're diluting the OA because you're taking its hex. You're not taking your hex. You understand?
Yeah.
You're not getting your inflation. You're taking other people's inflation, and that's what the
Yeah.
OA
Yeah.
allows us to
I,
do. What
I,
allows us to go. Sorry.
I understand that, but here's the problem with that. Number one, when you talk about majority ownership, remember that when companies scale, they sell off pieces of it, right? So once upon a time, Jeff Bezos owned 100% of Amazon. He also worked in an office by himself, and it was
I
worth
agree.
nothing.
I agree,
Now he owns like
but
nothing, right?
isn't the OA giving us, like, isn't the OA selling off its shares? Because like
in a
the
way
way I
in a
look at
way
it is
he is.
like,
Yeah, in a way it's diluting itself, but to what extent? Like here's the thesis: if we don't take off this bull cycle, if we can't make it on round 2, most cryptos are dead after that, right? So it's like, how do you, it's like, who cares what the OA's
well,
percentage of ownership is at year 20 if you didn't even make it through the second bull cycle, right?
the way I look at it is after the first cycle, I think we diluted it. If it maintains what it's doing right now, well, actually, we have to calculate what the big payday did, because by logic, right, it's 3.69% per year. After ten years, you should have a dilution of about approximate 30%. So if you think about 15 years, you're almost out like 40. You're at a 40% dilution of something that if at 90% you're not receiving the inflation, you're getting diluted and the whole system inflates at 40%, then after that time, you're basically almost losing half of what you have. So if the OA has, even if the OA were to have 100,
Yeah, but that's
it would
bearish though,
technically
right?
get diluted to a point where we actually have 51%. So
Yeah,
this
but
is something I said at the beginning, right?
that's
I
super
look at,
bearish.
it's not actually at 100%, dude. It's really not, man. Like, what 10
50%
years of
ownership after 50. Yeah, 50% ownership after
No,
10 to
it
15
dilutes
years
itself
is
at 50%. So like if right now we maintain, because but we're not all 100% stake. You realize that too. Like most of like the average is 7.5 years. So just
right.
by that average, it tells me that half of our coins are liquid and half of our coins aren't. Because then you got to look at, okay, well, we're not really 10%, but let's just take numbers, just crazy numbers out of there, and I can assume that after the first cycle, we will be the 51%. And if that's the case, Brent, it's amazing. It's amazing, because think about your dominance right now. If you would have maintained 13 years in Bitcoin, think about what dominance Satoshi has. I agree with you. By Satoshi not being here and coming back, it could be catastrophic, but it also
Yeah.
could be super reinforcing to Bitcoin.
I mean,
What?
the different, but think about the number of difference, right? Like after 10 years, Satoshi's down to 5%. 1 million out of 20 is about
Yeah.
5% ish.
Well, he also,
50%
but he
after 10
diluted
years.
himself. But he
Yeah, but
diluted himself.
50, but it needs to be diluted more. Like 50% ownership after 10 years is too much. That's
How?
what I'm saying.
But
Like
he, but it's not.
let's say
But
so he's got 500 some billion, right? If the users, and the users have what, like 89 billion, if the users, which we already know, it's like it's not going to get to 500 because max
you want
length
my
stakes
you want my
are
opinion on
basically
this?
triple. So
He's literally giving us his dividends. Like, in my opinion, he does. If in 15 years this works out and we are the majority, he does deserve 45%. I really do think, because he's been selling off his shares to us in hopes that we take over, right? So like, you have the opportunity to yourself to grow every day. Therefore,
yeah,
we as a community can grow compared to him. He's literally allowing us in competitive terms to outpace him. And
right,
I don't see the need for 1 to 2 years to come out and make it. If this is forever, it needs process. It needs time. It's the same reason why I like to have time, and there's 2 years, and it's like, because it's a consistency of markets, right? And a 15 years in markets is really, really cool, because you have that decade, which a lot of people use as statistics, but you have also half of that decade, which you could position yourself in like different ways to see the comparisons of the decade, which is one of the most common ways to analyze businesses and see the outcomes of things and so on and so forth for statistical measures. But mathematically too, it to me it makes sense, because if something is long term, it cannot be accomplished in such a short term time. An exponential curve, which is what the inflation of the hex is. And if we want hex to be a proportion of wealth, well, we need to proportionally distribute the wealth. So you have to be that individual, right? So there's two ways to take this. It's either you get none of the supply and you try to get the supply, or you act as a benevolent, where it's you have all the supply and you have to give it out. So it's
yeah,
kind of like we're in two different ways, where we need to be benevolent and stop us from getting rid of the appreciation. So we need to remove our coins from the system to then get what the coins in the system are allowing us to receive. So
right.
it's kind of
And
like a give and take. He gives it to us, but we got to give it back to him.
so here's the thing. I like the fact that it started this way. That's why I'm staked long term.
Yeah,
Number
of
one.
course.
But number two, taking over the supply of a coin that dies, or if it dies, means nothing. I don't care if I have triple my hex in 10 years if the coin is at zero, right?
I
So
agree. Of
just
course.
having more coins of something, or a better proportion of the coins compared to the OA, isn't in and of itself a good thing. Who cares if there's no extra money coming in? So to me, it's like, how do you balance that? It's like, yes, I want the marketing of look at these high APYs, but I also want the flip side of the marketing, which is no, the OA is not staking and making money and selling. He's actually burning the coins. That brings in more people. It's like which one's more beneficial
I don't
to
think it will bring in. I don't think it will bring in more people.
I think see that's the difference. I think it would. I think a lot of people that to me it's like because like me and you are doing it. We're already in. We already believe. It's not about us though. It's about how do you get the people who say, wait, 80% of the supply is in one address, like, and the guy can sell. Like, I'm not getting into that.
Yeah,
Sounds like
but
a
but
scam,
but it's not in one
right?
address though. Like but it's not in one address. Like there's the sacrifice wallet, right? Like I don't know if we consider that. If like are you looking at that specifically? Because to me that's more of like like
Whether it's in
organization.
one or
I
three,
think
I
it's an
mean,
organization. I think he
the
organized. It just
the
organized.
perception is he I mean, and this is another thing, like this whole, like, I don't know who controls it, it could be who knows. I mean, come on, dude, people aren't going to buy into that. Like, obviously he controls it, right? Him, or
Okay.
maybe a group of
Why
people.
are people buying Uniswap?
So
Or why are
so
people buying Aave? Why are people buying Wrap Bitcoin? Why are people buying all these other coins, Polygon, when the top 500 wallets own 95%, 85 to 95% of the coins? Like this, it's unsustainable. This argument, and we can have this argument. I love this argument. Is unsustainable and statistically,
so
it's
what
statistically unsustainable because we know that. Well, first of all, we don't know, right? We actually don't know. People assume.
I by the way, I personally believe he pumps hex, not dumps it. That's another thing that a
Yeah,
lot of people don't
absolutely,
believe. But
absolutely. I
that's a
think
whole different topic.
He created it. He gave us the opportunity. Like everything is there. But when I look at like when I look at like the Pulsechain sacrifice address, I look at it like more as like an organization because he has everything in such little wallets that, like, how do we not know that all these other coins are not 96 to 98% centralized because of their wallets, right? You also have to look at their liquidities are highly centralized. Everything to me, it's the statistics are just unsustainable when you look at the amount the top addresses have. To me, it's unsustainable because he literally makes it a joke where he's like, look, all my coins are in the two first addresses and I still have better numbers than these guys that have all these things distributed all over the place, and you think it's so good. Like, the numbers are there, it's all on Etherscan. Trust me, the world would be rubbing it in our faces if it was the case. And the reason why they don't rub it in our faces is because we can rub it in theirs. Right, Brent? And like, I don't think I think Richard is playing this game the best way possible. I love the fact that he's not in Pulse Chain. I love the fact that he has went ghost. I love it because he's not ghost. He's still here. It's like, bro, you know how much I would love to have John McAfee here, just because of his influence, his ideas, the way that his brain was able to envision the potential, right, and give us the ideas to say, okay, maybe he's right. Let's try this out. It doesn't make sense in an IRL perspective, but in a crypto perspective, it makes total sense. So, like, when I look at Hex, everything in the crypto perspective makes total sense. On the IRL sense, it can't make sense. To me, in my head, none of crypto makes sense in IRL. Because, like, just like the way Keith was like, yeah, but in normal traditional finance, yeah, but it's not traditional finance. You know what I mean? It's a new type of tech that has different stats, different numbers. And when I look at what he's doing, when I look at what he's doing, bro, I don't see anything wrong. I really don't. I just look at it so bullish because in the second cycle, we're going to be running it. And if we don't maintain that second cycle, we lose the third cycle. Every cycle, the newcomers can take over because the cycle dilutes it at a halvening. There's literally the way that the cycle has, because of 3.69 at 15 years, it literally gives you a number where it's kind of like a halvening. So the percentage of supply halvens, meaning that if you don't maintain for that cycle your percentage of supply, it is a guarantee that the inflation would have dilated you by half. So if you're staking at 30%, you only technically went up at 30. It's actually really, really, really beautiful when you counter the statistics. So, like, yes, we are compounded for these 3 years. That's why the bonuses are 3 times and everything gets like this, because when you look at the mathematics of everything and the numbers, and when you plug them in and say, oh, well, what if I do this? What if I do this? What if I do that? What if I do this? Then it gives you these numbers where it's like, it's so beautifully mathematically there. Like, even the good accounting. The good accounting is one hell of a play that we don't even understand. And it's going to be there in the second cycle, because I see the OA then becoming benevolent and good accounting people that have 50% of it. And it's a completely other game. You know what I mean? And if the OA doesn't maintain its supply throughout these cycles, then the people who are taking over can just take over. You know, like, who's the OA after that? If the OA is not the OA anymore, then you can
Yeah.
be the OA.
I mean, these
You know what I
things
mean?
are a little to me, they're a little too contradictory. It's like, oh, we're decentralized, but we have this one guy with 80% who can save everybody if he needs to. I mean, I
Yeah, but
think it's good to start with.
but
Hold
we
on,
could
let me finish.
argue that. I could argue that because then I could say, well, no, technically he doesn't own the wallets. The blockchain owns the wallets that he has, and you have to go specifically. And then
I
you
know,
go,
but the thing is, like, when you take these arguments into a space with a bunch of crypto people, they just laugh at you, right?
yeah,
We got to get to a point. To
I
me,
see where you're going, Brennan, for sure.
we have to we got to beat this whole like, oh, they're a scam, they're a joke, and we got to get off the floor and make a big bull cycle. If people are still calling us a scam like after or during the second cycle, it's like a problem, and it's our problem. Like, we did a bad job of explaining it. And so if you're trying to say and I'm hoping that, like, you know, he would never sell it or anything like that, but when you're saying like, oh, he kind of deserves half the supply after 10 years, that's like super bearish. I wouldn't tell people that. I wouldn't say like, yeah, you know,
yeah.
he's
But
gonna,
no, I
yeah.
would personally, I would tell people that because I don't. You see, even telling individuals, like, I agree with you. You know what? We can't go go into these spaces and I can't by myself
It's
go
way
into
too
a room of
complicated.
10 people. Yeah, but what happens if the person comes in here? What happens if they, like, I could just flip the coin on people, and I wish I would. To be honest with you, Brent, I do perform when I'm 1 against 10 because I could destroy all of them because I'm involved in all the things that they're possibly involved in. I've been in it. I know it. I know it better than them, and I could literally expose them to knowing nothing.
Yeah.
And I've done that multiple times. And it's not to be cocky. It's just like I would actually thrive in that case. So I
So
would
hear me
want to
out.
be in. That's why I talk the way I talk because I want to be put in that situation. Because I don't believe that we should be telling. We should tell people like, listen, Richard, even if he owns 90% of the coins, all of these hexagons rewards, all the hexagons that are boasting that they have T-shares and that they're getting all this yield is because of Richard. It's not
Yeah.
because of the people that are 100% staked.
Get that, which is why I'm pitching the best of both worlds. It's a compromise,
I
right?
agree.
If he burned it all today, I wouldn't like that. If he staked it all today, I wouldn't like that. But this slow sending of hex to the burn address over time, to the point where many years from now, like that's why I said Hex's 15th birthday, right? When all the first 555 stakes come out, hey guys, the OA has zero supply, your community run, you're on your own at this point.
By the way,
That would be super bullish.
the problem is the community selling all their hex. It's not the OA's fault that the OA bought the hex. It's the community's
Yes.
fault for not believing and selling it. You keep selling and ESing your stakes to hex, guess what's going to happen? The OA is going to hold 99.99999. And remember, the OA can only sell into the liquidity pool. So what are you going to do? Dump the price to zero? Then what do? We buy it up. It only has a little power.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, as Richard would call it, the parade of imaginary horribles. It's not for us to explain, right? Like, if you look in this space, we're obviously already in. We don't believe in any of that. It's more about how do you explain it and how do you get the rest of crypto to quit calling it a scam and get in, right? You said you would, though. If you send
Only if you send it to the burn address. I agree with you.
That's what I said. Send it to the burn address. That's what I said. So you
But
still have the total supply. It's just not under the control of, quote unquote, the Richard Hart OA
One
address.
entity, right?
but
Right. So then people are like, but he
that would
owns all the
affect the
coins, and
reward.
it's like, no, he's actually burning them. He's never
I'm
sold,
telling you,
and they're being burnt every month. So
it would affect the rewards, man. I think the
well,
rewards would get effective.
oh well, hold on, because now you're saying two different things. Because you said when it gets to the burn address, it doesn't affect the total supply.
No, it doesn't automatically affect it, but I think that the consequences on the community, you would be more enticed. You would be more enticed to stake because you technically have,
which is what we want people to do. Yeah, that's the
not
good
really,
behavior, right?
not really. You see, that's another thing that the hex community is a bit of a capper, and it's funny. It's like we don't want people to stake. We want to get all the money.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, yeah. Well, see, now we're getting into like hex v hex. You know, like, yeah, what's your time horizon? Like I know influencers who literally have said, "I hold all my hex liquid." Like, they've literally said that out loud. But you're not gonna, regardless of what the OA address does, if you're already in hex and you've already decided whether you like staking or don't like it or what time horizons, then you're probably just gonna keep doing whatever you're doing, right? This is not for people already in hex. This is for getting more hex adoption. Right?
I agree with you, but then there's always a consequence, though, because you're saying you would feel more comfortable if the money was not able to be sold and if you didn't have proportion of it. But then it would just give the other people more opportunity to sell because they're the only ones that can technically take out. So you're giving you're then giving the or because then it becomes
Well,
a
the OA's
fake
never sold
market.
anyway, so how does that affect anything? It doesn't. I don't
but
think
but
selling
but but
matters.
because everyone that's not on the same page is thinking, I can't stake 100% because DOA has 90. That's the only reason why people are not. Everyone is 100% staking. Okay,
Because
so right now we're in the system, right? You're telling the new people, you're trying to entice the new people to come and buy, right?
people
If we
who do,
if
who,
we
yeah,
burn
yeah,
if we burn the OA, we are
slowly
not
over
gonna.
time. I'm not saying burn it all
Slowly,
today.
yeah.
See,
Keyword
you're acting
is
like you flip a
monthly.
switch and the yield just goes to zero. That's why I'm talking about this compromise,
It,
where it's like a slow burn over time, like 10 million hex a month or something. So that 15 years from now, that supply would just be gone. People would see, okay, this is
But
where
that's
it's
his hex.
going.
Why aren't we
Well,
burning our hex? So wait. Would
people,
you
yeah,
want to create
people
a
are
protocol
Because
that
ETSing
we
more than that.
no one is not getting into hex because Crypto the Famous has a bunch of hex. That's not something they cite. They cite the OA address having 80%. That's the problem,
Okay,
dude. It's just
Yeah,
that.
but
okay,
That's all it is.
but if I bet you
no, it's not.
if I went live and told everyone that I'm doing this and this and this and this and I flaunt, I bet you people are gonna
You
get the
probably
fuck
could.
out of that system. I
Yeah,
bet you
I
people are
mean,
gonna
yeah.
dump my system. They're gonna be like, you know
Just
what I
for a
mean?
good example, did you guys watch the movie the Highest of Stakes?
Yeah, I did. I didn't really appreciate it, but
I didn't like it either, by the way. I thought they did a really bad job of actually explaining what hex is. Like, they didn't even talk about it. They're just like, is it a scam or no? Anyway, one of the guys they interviewed was like was he Nomics? He was like, or CoinGecko? He was like one of the guys for one of those
Clay,
coin sites. What was it?
Clay, Clay Collins
Yeah.
comics.
One of the things he cited was, even if it's not, it's like, I don't feel comfortable with this guy having 80% of the supply. He said that in the movie. So anyway,
okay, but doesn't it bother you that like okay, and I'm gonna speak on ETH terms because I can only FUD what I really love, right? At the end of the day, like, doesn't it bother you that like 50 to like 70% of ETH is like owned by the top exchanges and protocols and bridges? Like, it doesn't bother you that it's the guys who are literally that monopolize the whole liquidity, monopolize the whole tech, monopolize the whole protocols on Ethereum. They're literally monopolizing everything. Like I don't hear
yeah.
anyone complaining about
And
that.
they, and
But the difference,
also,
Or the block makers that there's like what I think now we're down to 63, not
I know,
66.
but Famous, they're Ethereum and nobody calls them a scam.
BNB was gonna kill us, bro. You know how much FUD
Yeah.
I have to live with, like on ETH. It's like, bro, forget about it. This is why I'm laughing, and I'm
Uh,
like, okay, well, why you
yeah.
think there's no bots on ETH?
The only thing that's different, I agree with that.
They love you, dude. First they're gonna hate you, then they're gonna love you, dude.
Yeah. No, the only thing that's different that I'll point out is you can't rely on these historical, like, oh, well, Bitcoin did it. It's like, dude, Bitcoin was the first crypto almost ever, right? Oh, well, that's what they said about Ethereum. It's like, dude, Ethereum's literally the best smart contract platform in the world.
I
It's
agree with you.
gotten a lot more competitive. You can't just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna follow the Ethereum
I
fractum.
I agree
That's
with you, but
not.
there's always that side, right?
You
Like,
got to
you got to look at it
you got to be
neutrally.
competitive. You got to go
Yeah,
out
but
there. You know?
the competitiveness is not, there's no competitiveness on the blockchain. It's all numbers. If the competitiveness is a human aspect, there is no competition. Competition is something that we've attributed emotions to, right? So the bad part, the this, the that. When you look at the mathematics, right, Brandon? Me, I'm not looking at it in terms of like, okay, if the away were to be burning itself, the new people would not be buying a lot of hex. They would be buying a lot of dollar value in hex, but the hex value would be really up because we would value it more, right? Like by your logic, because you're trying to do something that then consequentially is better for the system. Okay,
Which is
but
good,
sometimes what?
right? Because then we get green
Well, no.
candles.
Sometimes the consequence, sometimes all the right decisions could lead you to the worst decision ever, just like all the bad decisions could lead you to the best decision
So
ever.
so you're saying that the idea might be so bullish that it would get people to stop dumping the chart and start buying again? That
Well,
sounds like
then
a good thing, dude.
Well, no,
I
because then
mean,
hex
like,
loses. No, because then you're making hex just a pump and dump. You're making hex just a meme coin where it's a community memes and the price go up.
but look at the chart. It's
What
up
no one would be
1000x
getting.
down
No one would be getting
99%,
yield.
dude. It
No one
already
would be
looks like a
getting the
pump and
yield.
dump. It
Trust
already
me,
looks like a pump and dump.
in
Like,
hex.
we
No,
can't.
but yeah, but it looks like a pump and dump, but it's not. because it literally like gave all its liquidity to a whole L1. The liquidity basis of Hex, it then translated into an L1. So you
So
have to assume that the main
yeah,
source of liquidity for that community, which was Hex, is then going to distribute itself over into an L1.
and
Now
I
people are,
guess my entire thesis is based around I understand exactly what you're saying,
yeah,
but nobody else does. And when you try to
but
make
that's
these
their
arguments,
problem. But that's their
well,
problem. What do you think? Everyone
you
deserves to
say
be
that, but if
a
nobody buys the thing you're in, then it's our problem too, right? Like
no, no, not really, because
you
we
can
live
make the
in.
greatest thing
Okay,
in the world, but that doesn't mean
I don't
it's
think so, because I think mass adoption is the reason why things go bad in crypto. I'm really being honest. Like after the 10 years of being here, bro,